All right, Steve, am I, hear me okay? All right, great, thank you. Good evening, it's 5:30, and I'd like to call the March 2022 meeting of the Riverfront Improvement Commission to order. Steve, do we have any remote attendees?
We do this evening. We've got Alderwoman Lee is joining us remotely, and we have a full complement of our commission in attendance here this evening.
Sorry, your mic is off. Gotcha on.
Thank you. I'm usually the reminder. Sorry. Thank you for that. Yeah. So we are joined by Alderwoman Lee remotely, and all are in attendance here from the commission this evening.
Great.
And I just want to make note and welcome our newest commissioner, Roma Taylor. She is Alderman Kelly's appointment, our newest addition from the 5th Ward. So welcome, Roma.
Welcome. We're happy to have you. All right, so first matter of business, I'd like to call for a motion of approval of the February minutes, which are in your packet. All right, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, looks like we have approval on the February minutes. All right, next order of business, we have finance. We have to approve the disbursements. Do I have a motion for that? All right, we have a movement and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the disbursements have been approved. Next up, so previously we had discussion on the lease of the Lake Davenport Sailing Club. And looks like this month, I believe we were in agreement on basically renewing the existing terms. So any discussion or motion on that?
Just to reiterate, this is, you saw this last month, and so this is an existing tenant, long-term, not-for-profit, education-related tenant of ours, and so the renewal terms are exactly the same, and for another 3-year term.
I move approval of the lease for the sailing club.
All right, do I have a second? All right, several seconds.
Who? I just get to pick one, okay?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we've gone ahead and renewed their lease. Next up, we have project. And Steve, can you give us an update on that evolving 2022 calendar of events?
I think I'll just come up here just to make it a little easier perspective-wise. So I wanted to give an update, and I included in the packet our exciting 2022 calendar of events that we've been working really hard on kind of confirming various pieces of. And so hopefully you've had a chance to look through it. The task force has, we were able to meet, if you'll recall from the last commission meeting last month. We got together to look through from a budget standpoint and have been able to look at the calendar events and the overall budget, and we'll talk budget after the calendar of events here, but I wanted to assure you that it works. We were able to provide this year's calendar of events on the Riverfront, and it's in its form that is presented this evening, and still provide a balanced budget from an operations standpoint, something I can feel very comfortable presenting to you, and that you should feel very positive about, and frankly, coming from last year, something that we can continue to build upon each year. Now, I would say that, you know, each year we want to sort of add to this, I think, and grow from it. And so we have work to do to continue to, you know, send that carry that message to various funders, including, you know, our friends on the city council, to spread that very message about widening the net and the need, frankly, for additional funding for those that enjoy the kinds of activities and events that we have begun to offer more and more along the riverfront. To give you a taste, and those watching, I won't go line by line here, but you know, essentially we try to provide, you know, a year-round, accessible to all riverfront programming. And so we believe also that the riverfront here in Davenport doesn't need to just be programmed in the, you know, when the weather is beautiful in May and June and July, that we mustn't forget that there are opportunities in the winter, and there are businesses too that depend on some of those very activities when programmed, for people to come and patronize them. So here very shortly, in just a couple weeks, this calendar begins in full force to begin to be implemented. And so we're very excited about that. We've got, you know, a couple additional movies on the Mississippi this year. Last year, that was very exciting to be able to offer in LeClaire Park with the Mississippi River in the backdrop. They were very popular. More than 300 kids, families were able to enjoy these free outdoor movies in a beautiful setting. We were able to offer 3 movies, and this year there will be 5 that will be offered at various points, and you'll be able to see those. We've begun to get that word out in a variety of ways through the schools and in other ways that you'll begin to hear through our marketing efforts. Another thing I want to highlight relates to the use of Quinlan Court. We learned some lessons last year as far as the use of that flex lot, that flex space. And so one of the things that is included in this year's calendar of events is to have a deliberate weekly time, so a series that is, in this case, every Thursday evening. So from 7 to 9, June through September, there will be we're calling it Riverpalooza. There will be live entertainment. There will be food and drink for purchase. But June through September, Thursday nights in Quinlan Court, we're really excited about that. It amounts to be 18 evenings where folks will be able to come to Quinlan Court and enjoy music, similar to what we've offered, what the commission has offered free to the community at the band shell for nearly, 100 years on Sunday evenings. We will continue that tradition as well. That's June, the Sunday Night Summer Concert Series you see listed here. There are 9 Sundays where that's the case as well. Actually 8 and 1 Wednesday night, but that's music on the river that begins in June. There are a number of other events as well, including Red, White, and Boom that we take a lead role in. And so that is this year, the big fireworks celebration is on Sunday, July 3rd, and that promises to be as spectacular as ever. We start off the day with the farmers market from 10 to 2, and there's there's a baseball game that evening before the fireworks. There's Parks is planning a cornhole tournament for charity from 1 o'clock on until the fireworks. There'll be music and kids games, a kids zone throughout the LeClaire Park area. I mean, more details to come, but the point is that the Riverfront will be alive and very spirited fun for the entire day on July 3rd. There's several other points to highlight, but one in particular that I want to is on the weekend of July 22nd, 23rd, 24th, at the Freight House, there will be a what we're calling Sand Extravaganza. There will be a volleyball tournament, sand volleyball tournament at the Freight House area, and sand sculpting, visual artistry connected to that. And so I don't want to spoil it all right now, but there will be great fun and something very new and kind of a Christmas in July theme that will be new to the community, and I think will become an annual tradition that will be well embraced. So not just the same old, this is definitely things, that are creative, based on feedback, and pushing constantly to do better and more with less, and trying to secure partnerships all the time with our various community friends and partners that we have. And so I wanted to give you a sense that we are working very hard this year, and this calendar is something that will be you can be proud of, but at the same time, it is not something that is complete ever. You follow? I mean, this is something we still would love to have done more. We would always love to do more, and we will continue to seek that to the extent that we can identify additional funding to help us to do that. Are there any
Sure, Bill?
additional questions?
On the Sands Travaganza you
Yes.
just talked about, I assume what it's going to be man-made mobile sand courts. Is that on the parking lot?
It is. There will be two.
Okay. All right, my other question is, isn't this by far the most extensive and longest list of activities we've ever had on the riverfront up to this point? Isn't that fair to say?
It's a robust list. I mean, I think it comes pretty darn close to previous, to last year's list as well. We had to sort of pull back from some of the things we wanted to do even more than this year.
Okay.
But like I said, I think we can continue to just grow each year from this.
Okay, and my last question is this for public distribution at this point, this calendar of events right here?
Thank you for bringing that up. So already working with communications, city communications, what we're doing is creating through our own city website, it'll be a landing page that will be a / Riverfront, not quite there yet, but the landing page will be a calendar of events that will list each of these events, that will also provide, the necessary details. We're still filling in. You'll notice some of these lists, like Riverpalooza, for example, but I'm still confirming some of the entertainment for that particular night. So I'm taking the next couple of weeks to actually fill in those, confirming some of those acts, if you will.
So you're saying...
So within the next couple of weeks, I will be able to confirm all of that and launch that site well in advance of
So
these events.
we should not at this point put it on our social media?
I wouldn't yet.
Okay.
I will make sure you have that when
Okay.
it is final, but
Okay.
I also want you to have this tonight, because it will be finalized prior to your next meeting, and you need to have the update from our last meeting, because there is one, there is an update. But we're definitely, moving forward here. But there are a variety of ways that we are working to get we'll continue to work to get the word out.
Dee?
Yeah.
Oh,
Basically, when we worked in the budget, what we had to do was take events out of May. I want you to know that all the movies were prepaid in this budget year and not next budget year. So when we get to next budget year, or the end of this budget coming up, we won't have the money to prepay for movies for 2023 because this budget doesn't allow that. So while we went into a budget meeting and we got our budget in order, we asked the council for more money to be able to do the same programming that we did last year. And while this is robust, and I love Steve because you're very optimistic and really take the best out of everything, we did have to cut back on what we requested and what we thought we could do. And so I think that we need to know that. I mean, it's a great program, but it's not what we anticipated. We were hoping the city council saw the value of programming in the flavor that we did last year and maybe even more. So while this budget will be the same and our 2022 calendar will be the same, I can't really say that's true when we go into 2023. We will not be on par because we had money left over in the current budget to do May and June. So we just really need to keep that in account.
Right.
Brianna?
I just have a question. Is the River Palooza at Quinlan Court different than the Mercado that happened last year?
Well, it's different in that the variety of music will be a variety of music.
Okay,
There'll be all sorts of genres.
Yeah.
We're trying to
Because
appeal
was
to
that
everyone.
like a thing that Moline was doing and then they were bringing it over here?
Right.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was kind of the same thing or not. And we just named it something different, I didn't know.
Yep.
All right, any other discussion? Well, Steve, thank you so much for all the work you put into getting close to balance. I know we had tried to be quite a bit more ambitious and unfortunately didn't necessarily have all the funds for that, but you put a ton of work into making it a still incredibly robust season for us, and I'm definitely looking forward to moving forward with that. So speaking of which, up next we have the operating budget, so please go ahead and update us on that.
Certainly. So the last page of your budget, and it obviously ties directly into this calendar of events, we've talked about our recommended 2023 fiscal year budget previous to now, and I'm, after the task force has met, we're moving forward with tonight seeking approval of the overall operating budget for the next fiscal year, which would begin starting in July. And I do actually echo the sentiments by Commissioner Bremer as it relates to sort of the position we're in as it relates to programming. What we were able to do was identify some ways in which to, out of necessity really, curb back some of, the program basically. And so you will see under project expense, it's a line item that has $65,000 earmarked for it in the next fiscal year. And so that is inclusive of the programming. And so all of the fiscal year 2023 dollars for the program that you see, the programming that you see, except for anything that is spent prior to July 1, because that would come out of the current fiscal year dollars, would come out of that line item. It doesn't mean means it's worth $65,000, by the way, because it's not solely for programming. Project expense also covers other, not necessarily capital, because that's a different budget altogether that normally we go through the normal city process for. But these are other things. We manage, we help to manage many different things that are short of more than a 5-year lifespan or something like that from a capital standpoint on behalf of our tenants or just various needs along different properties that come up. Smaller projects, if you will, smaller needs that come up. And so that is different than Maintenance Buildings and Grounds Fund, which you also see here. But those two funds are really our only sources for such matters. Everything else is very, very much defined in other ways, as you can see from either a utility, which is clearly defined, and staffing and that sort of thing. And so I just want to clarify that. We've gone through budget, previously, but all of that, and we've talked before about the transfer in and how the that city transfer in, much of it goes right back out to parks for services that we're working on a much more deliberate plan moving forward. So you might recall, and for those of you who might not have this background with us, previously, prior to the pandemic, but maybe even prior to the flooding of 2019, there was a group of commissioners. A few of you were part of this, and a few council members that were meeting, a task force really, kind of to go over some common issues. Specifically, right before we were hit with the pandemic, we were just getting to the nuts and bolts of what we need to sort of come back together and begin to meet again about. And that was this common maintenance program. So, you all are aware of this $52,500 a year that basically that we transfer out from our fund each year to Parks and Rec to caretake on the Riverfront. And so we are planning that group to be reestablished, essentially, get back together, and to begin to identify more specifically the parameters for that work program, the scope, if you will, then from that point forward, I think we'll be able to all of us will be more clearly on the same page, and I think some better decision making can be made from a budget standpoint moving forward, and that is also part of, if you'll recall, the proposal that was part of what we called the Riverfront refresh. We had that marketing piece, the programming piece, and this maintenance piece. So it is not all for naught. All of these pieces are still in different stages. We just need to work through them, spend some time over the next several months doing so, and having some clear takeaways from them. And then I think we'll at least then have a plan, or be able to identify a plan moving past that. So you'll see then that I've included in the current fiscal year, the easement, the one-time Mid-American easement allocation, and brought that forward to the next fiscal year. Again, I want to, there should be an asterisk by that. I won't you may tire of me saying it, or others may, but I'm going to continue to remind us that that is, is a one-time payment in lieu of, an ongoing annual rent. So we're foregoing, in perpetuity lease rent for that, not in addition to that. And so, over time, that's what we're not getting. And so I think we have to be mindful of that and not necessarily spend it, overnight kind of thing. And so it might look to some that look at our budget like a major windfall immediately, but I think we have to be deliberate about that. I'm convinced we will be, but I say that more for the benefit of others than for the commission itself. But you'll see then that there is we call it changes to the fund balance. So for the upcoming 2023 recommended budget, that a $3,137 positive change to the fund balance, we would conclude that fiscal year with a balance of $350,669. And so with that, I'd be happy to take some questions prior to seeking approval for this budget.
Now, Steve, when we had that budget task force, we had a list of the kind of estimated expenditures for these various
Yes.
items on the calendar. Is there still kind of possibility for partnering with like a private partnership, or could we get that kind of finer tuned with the items that ended up being omitted due to the budget constraints? Because I think that would really assist with us maybe going out and seeking some kind of, there's obviously entities surrounding many of these events that are going to directly benefit from their location, and I think it makes sense with some of our neighbors to possibly reach out as long as we know what those needs are.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, I've attached general estimates for essentially every line item event to this calendar for what, based off of the past, what is expected, to be the cost. And so, yes, that's how we move forward with seeking either a partnership and or when we seek grants or whatever. In fact, there's a couple other opportunities that are coming up here in the very near future that I think are, I hate trying to guess whether ahead of time we're going to get, something, and, then I have to come up here and hang my head if we don't or whatever. But I mean, we're trying, and we get that. That's all you really can do. And sometimes you're successful at it, and sometimes not. But I think that partnering makes sense on a variety of levels, and we're doing that best we can. So.
Well, and to Dee's point earlier, that could help us with our planning for next fiscal year. If
Absolutely
we're kind of running
true.
very close to the wire and we want to maintain a balanced budget, seeking out those partnerships could really assist kind of with building up a little bit more of that war chest to move into next year.
Something I learned a long time ago, and I think Dee would appreciate this too, but there's never a point where you don't have your foot in like 3 budget years. Like I still kind of closing out last year's, still have your foot in this year's, and I'm already looking ahead at next year's, because that's just the nature. It's just the nature of how this works, how this stuff is.
So for my understanding, is the calendar that we have printed in front of us, is that fully funded then?
Yes.
As we know, as we see it on our sheet right here, what we have on our sheet it will be funded as printed here.
Yes.
Okay, good.
All right, any further discussion?
Really, I want to speak to the fund balance, because I know if you had a public person looking at this, they would basically say, you have almost 85% of an annual budget in your fund balance now. I see this more as the ability for the commission to have flexibility. I hope and I would encourage all of us not to use this as a way to shore up a budget when we're 10,000 short here or 10,000 short there. I see this more as an opportunity now that we can seek and match money in grants where we don't have to wait for the council to put it in a fiscal year for us. We can say to a grantor, we have the monies for this particular part because we can pledge these one-time dollars. So I would hope that we would guard these like one-time dollars in our fund balance generally, and work with Steve to look for those opportunities. We have a lot of things on our list that we'd like to use consultants for or other small projects. And if there's a grant opportunity, they usually want something to match, and this would be a perfect opportunity to hold this in reserve for that.
Well said. All right, so if we have no further discussion, I'm looking for a motion to approve the operating budget as presented.
I move that we approve the fiscal year 2023 budget.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, the budget is approved. So on to, which dovetails nicely, the Hello Lamppost.
Yeah, and just a quick, this is still underway, but you've heard me talk about this a little bit before. This is a unique opportunity related to the marketing plan. It's part of our marketing plan. I think it's going to take much of this year, maybe the entire part of this year, to get, help get people used to or accustomed to this. But this is a interactive way to help create some buzz and share information. So we're going to use it this year. There'll be it's a texting and using a QR code, and to help make people more aware of what's going on the riverfront. And so there'll be some opportunities. What I envision are fivefold, basically, to share information about the calendar, primarily, right? So we would interact with them and get them to the landing site, and share this calendar ultimately. Now we don't just send them there. We want it to be not hokey, but we want it to be interactive. That's kind of the nature of it. So we're in the midst right now of writing some content because, there needs to be this back and forth interactivity. I think that we have to have in mind, because of the placement of some of this signage, to make sure it's not, gaudy and, all of that kind of stuff too, or not too much of it. And so I have in my mind some mobile possibilities so that when we're at different events that we can, on sandwich boards perhaps, and we often introduce events, the bands or whatever. I can make mention of some of this, and explain what it is, because a lot of people might not on their own know what it is. We might have to nudge, we might have to encourage initially, hopefully not always, because we're not always going to be around that, but at the farmer's market where there's high foot traffic, we need to place some of this and get this in front of people, these opportunities. For example, at River Heritage Park, when there are, these passenger, the myriad of stops that are going to take place between Viking and American Cruise Lines, definitely we need something along these lines so that right in front of them are some area, things to do, right? Places to go. So some of that interactivity, it may not so much be the events calendar, because that doesn't make so much sense. They're there for a few hours that day. If it's not going on in that moment, it really is a moot point to them. However, what makes more sense is, different places that may or may not, not everybody partakes in the schedule that's given to them. They have opportunities to go, off the grid, if you will. Some of them don't have to get on the bus and go on the scheduled tour, they have opportunities to take their 4 or 5 or 6 hours and do what they want to do and be back in time when, the scheduled time that they need to be. So for those folks, this is perfect, right? They would be looking for an easy way to find some information, thinking along those lines, helping them out. Having something back to the farmer's market, they have a myriad of activities. They need something just to help communicate beyond their website about their activities, their special events and all of that. A fourth item is, local historical interests, just thinking totally outside some of the things I just mentioned. Just generally, if you stand back to River Heritage Park, for example, there are countless, just by visualization, vistas, there are countless points of interest. I'm not even going to a couple other places along the riverfront, but there are countless points just in that area of interest to many of us, let alone visitors to our community. And so let's, capture that and articulate that. Here's a way to do that, okay? And so we would begin that interactivity and communicate it accordingly. And then finally, I think we all should be interested in feedback, and so some sort of surveying ability and collection of information, through that feedback, without too much of the big brother piece as well. But we need to know what can be improved, what people are saying, what they like, what they don't like, if they're seeing too much trash in an area, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? For us to be able to say it's not just us that are noticing that. That would be helpful information, I think. So those are kind of the 5 areas that I've outlined, and I'm kind of in the midst of developing some of the content leading up to it, and then some of the signage and placement throughout from, the Channel Cat area. I'm trying to look at high traffic areas all the way and including, to Credit Island. Without it being everywhere, but with it being meaningful as well. Union Station, Freight House. I could go on. And so I just wanted to kind of give you a sense, because it will be sort of introduced throughout and in an ongoing way, and it will take some ongoing effort throughout, because I just don't think it will magically be, totally embraced by everyone. I think many people would walk right by it and not quite use it or understand it. I think it's going to take a lot of hand-holding and explaining, and so we're going to have to be ready for that.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I think that especially with COVID and everything going touchless, so many people have become a lot more familiar with using QR codes, whether it's at restaurants or
Right.
music venues or whatnot. So I think this is a perfect time to kind of get on something that people have become super accustomed to during these odd times. Bill, did I see that you were?
Well, I think that we were playing with it.
Yeah, where you just hit buttons.
Yes, but before summer, this spring. Yeah, yep, absolutely.
All right. Any further discussion?
And then while I'm up here, I'll
let's
just,
go
I have
on
a
to
few
the-
announcements into my report, and
Yeah.
then I'll sit down and try to behave a little bit. A couple things of interest. We have the Riverfront Refresh Cleanup scheduled for Saturday, April 23rd from 8 to noon. We've got, that will be headquartered at the Freight House, but we will have lots of different activities that require volunteer for any amount of time. So if you're interested or know someone who is, pass the word along. We're getting that word out. The groups have been, we're trying to send that out as widely as possible, and there, hopefully it'll be a nice day that will help with us achieving a lot of activities. The Mid-American Energy Easement update is, we approved that last meeting, and it is to be approved tomorrow night. It's on the city council consent agenda tomorrow evening. We just wanted to let you know that. I made mention of the back to work, the task force of the Riverfront Improvement Commission and Parks, yet to be scheduled, but if some of you will be asked to be part of that again as well. Next meeting, we will be in April. You might recall that we had discussed the Nahant Marsh Education Center. That will be back before us. It's been a great while since we had talked about that, but you might recall that there were a few parcels of land that was of interest, and I looked back through our notes, we had no problem with them, Nahant, having some management. We're not giving this land away. It was a management of some of this land, and that we were just waiting for the agreement, this renewal of an agreement, an existing agreement between they and the city to be ready for it, the renewal, and for those parcels to be included within that. Well, that is now ready, and so it is that agreement will come through us at the next meeting on its way to the city council. And I'd just like to let you guys have that heads up, because that's the plan at this point. That'll be at the April meeting. Let's see here. We have identified for Quinlan Court a vendor for pouring rights, and so I just wanted to let you know, after we went out for bid, we were not able to. There were no respondents to that, but we were able, after that, subsequent to that, we were able to identify Front Street Brewery will be assisting with that this summer. And so we are able to, during Riverpalooza and other events, actually all that take place there, that will be helpful in, the further animation of the events that take place there. And then wanted to let you know that regarding this came up at the last meeting, I wanted to give you an update as I've received it regarding Main Street Landing, the design firm. There were, I think I told you at the last meeting, there were 12 design firms that responded to the call for the RFQ for design firm selection, and the chair, Kelly Grubbs, and myself have been asked to serve on the interview selection team, part of a larger group of citywide folks. There will be parks representation and elected officials and various staff and others that will be part of that interview team that will interview the top several of those 12 that responded to determine who among them would be ultimately selected and recommended to. Yes, for Main Street Landing, yes, who ultimately would be recommended for city council approval. So, and that takes place in mid-April, I think the 11th or 12th or something along those lines. So wanted to make mention of that participation and representation by the Riverfront Improvement Commission Oh, and then lastly, follow up to something that Alderman Grip and the mayor have been working on as well, and we made mention of last meeting. But this is regarding the dredging in Lindsay Park Marina, and there's an official response that we were able to, that we received, and it's basically from Colonel Curry, Commander and District Engineer, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, that essentially, I won't read it all, but it essentially says the Corps will conduct a hydrographic survey of the harbor to evaluate its current condition, and will inspect the perimeter breakwater to assess any potential deficiencies. It basically is saying that this is a starting point, but it's a starting point, okay? I mean, that is what I want to convey to you, that it's more than just, making, having had us reach out and someone saying, oh, sure, whatever, thank you, whatever, but we, there's some follow-up happening, and hopefully from this, there's some need that is truly analytically determined, and some dollars that are available that could be, will be provided. And that is yet to be fully known, but it would appear that all of those conversations are occurring adequately and appropriately at this point. So I just wanted to make us aware this is a tenant of ours. This is an important function, as we've been approached many times before with updates about the need, the significant need of dredging in this area. Mike?
Said they're gonna make a hydrographic survey. From that, they get the quantity, but they didn't give any indication how long from that hydrographic survey to when they normally get around to putting money to that project.
No, but there are dollars currently available specific for dredging. So it would appear that now is a pretty unique and decent time. And that's what I have for my update at this point, if there aren't any other questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Steve. All right, up next we have the Parks Report. Chris?
Yeah, this month we finalized the results of the Parks Development Program, which is a yearly thing where $350,000 of kind of discretionary capital budget is divvied up by a vote of each Parks Advisory Board member, and each City Council member gets to vote on how this $350,000 is going to be spent. The three that basically affect the riverfront is $55,000 for Skatepark Maintenance, which is patching and repairing some of the concrete and lowering some of the rails to be more accessible to smaller, younger kids. $25,000 for a new boiler for the River's Edge, because they've been having some real issues with that, and parts and repairs are more than replacing it. And $25,000 for redoing the floor of the Credit Island Lodge with an epoxy, hopefully flood-proof floor that will last, hopefully, a long time. So just editorially for me, that adds up to over $100,000 out of the $350,000 is along the riverfront. And considering there's a lot of other parks in the city, that seems like a pretty good chunk that went towards that. And they were all good projects, but they couldn't all be funded. So I believe that's all. I attended remotely from Phoenix, so I may have missed a couple things at the advisory board meeting, but that's all I have to present to you guys.
All right, very good. Thank you so much. All right, that brings us to public with business. Do we have any public with business?
Good to see you all. All handled. Ward 4, also Nashville, Tennessee. And I guess pretty good timing, I guess. So something I've talked about in the past, figured it'd be a good time to talk about it again today, which is the proposed destination playground at Main Street Landing. You know, I guess what I wanted to ask before the meeting and didn't have a chance to do that is to whether this board has actually voted on to accept the idea of doing that, or if that was even something that was even brought up for your attention. I know in the past, when, for example, the Ferris wheel was proposed, it was brought up, debated fairly hotly with the board at that time, and it went to the council. And then the 8 years ago, when the large restaurant complex was considered, it was debated by the commission, and they voted against it very strongly. The mayor was against it, and every council member at that time was for it. This is a larger body than that was at that time. You don't have, I think you only had maybe, how many were there? 7 members at that time, Bill Ashton. But anyway, I need to go forward on it. I still have some skepticism about the whole venture because it's considered a world-class destination for the city of Davenport, a la Maggie Daley Park in Chicago, which of course is a 20-acre facility. If you can imagine 20 acres, that would be every block of downtown Davenport, from River Drive to 4th, from Perry all the way to Harrison. Every one of those 9 blocks, there's the 20 acres of Maggie Daley Park that everyone loves. By contrast, the area that we have right here is 2 acres, which is, although it's nice, it's by the river, it's not much bigger than my house in Nashville. Happy as I am with it, I wouldn't consider my house a tourist destination, let alone a world-class one. So one of the things, obviously, I'm happy with the designers that the city is considering. I think they're very good ones. I think on one of the first questions I would ask them in the evaluation of whether they get selected is if they think that particular site is the best one for the city, for this use. And I think the answer that they have will be very telling about their professionalism and their knowledge of our city and of design in general. And if they're as good as I think they are, I think they'll probably say, we feel that that's probably not the best place. If that's where you want it to be, we'll do it, but we'll hold our nose and do what you want. Where would you do it instead? I think Centennial Park, and I said this in the past to many people at council, I said Centennial Park, we've got all 20 acres are right there. If we want to have an actual Maggie Daley Park, we can have it. Maybe it'll take us 50 years to do it, but we would have a Maggie Daley Park at the end of that. Maybe we'd start out with 2 acres for now. But I think that's looking for the future of Davenport. I know that right now everybody's focusing between the 2 bridges. 50 years from now, global climate change, Davenport might be 5 times as big as we are now. And we'll say, why did we think so small in 2022? So I think we ought to think bigger. And I think changing the location of that park is the #1 thing. Not to mention there's something that I really hate to bring up, but the disparate nature of our city, which is, I didn't get it when I was a kid, but I get it now, split between the west and the east. West of Gaines Street isn't as desirable as an area as east of Gaines Street. And by putting this park east of Gaines, we're creating a park, Centennial Park, one type of park, and we're creating this tiny little favorite park. I don't think that's the intent of anybody, but I think that's the impact of it. And I think that's not the way we want to go. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Bill. All right, well, thank you all so very much for attending. This meeting is adjourned.